Mary Lou's.
Thank you.
And we think this guy is terrific.
Okay. Here.
The article that came out, the opinion piece that came out in the paper a week or two ago was perfect. So,
Yeah. When he did the 18-mile trek.
Yeah.
so
Thank
anyway.
you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mary Lou. Thank you. Thank you. Wendy.
So I want to tell you a little story about ice in Merrimack. So on Christmas Day, I found out that the DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security, was going to purchase a warehouse in Merrimack and create a detention facility. We all got together, and when I say we all, I mean the state of New Hampshire. We understood the assignment. We organized teams. We wrote letters to the editor. We wrote op-eds. We got on the Rachel Maddow show, and we stopped that facility. Now, the thing is, there are two types of leaders right now in the Democratic Party. The first type of leader called me up and said, Wendy, don't go too fast. Don't offend anyone. It's only a rumor right now. DHS has not confirmed this. And I said, get out of the way. I've got work to do. The second type of leader is what Christian is. He called me the day after Christmas, and he said, Wendy, what do you need? How can I help? Put me to work. That's what we need in leaders right now to fight this regime. What do you need? How can I help? Put me to work. We all need to do that. And Christian rolled up his sleeves and helped, and he was on top of it the entire time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. And look, I got to say something. Like, because of Wendy's efforts, she was tip of the spear in taking on this administration and ICE and everything. It was a collective effort.
It was.
Collective effort. But that's what leaders do. They bring people together, and she deserves a big round of applause.
Well, thank you.
So.
Thank you very much.
And then I want to introduce you all real quick to Alice Wade, one of the amazing young representatives that we have in this state. I'll give her, 30 seconds a minute. He's going to make some quick remarks, and then we'll get into the talk.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I'm State Representative Alice Wade from Dover. It was a pretty short drive today. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff you gotta drive quite a ways for in this state. But so I'm here on behalf of the Progressive Caucus Board. We, as an organization of around 40 members in the state legislature, are really just focused on working for everyday people and making sure that New Hampshire is a place where you don't have to be wealthy and well-connected to have the opportunity to succeed. Because right now, New Hampshire is catered to the wealthy. Year after year, Republicans are cutting taxes on businesses and on rich people, and our education system is failing, our housing system is failing. And as a young person especially, I know how these issues are often not the center of attention in the legislature from a lot of folks who serve that are well off and are not renters, and people like me. And as part of the Progressive Caucus, we organized and endorsed Christian along with a few other progressive organizations because our goal is to build a coalition to center around one progressive candidate who we believe can win in this state, who is a strong fighter for universal health care, for affordable housing, and for so many of the policies that we all care about. And so after a whole endorsement process with all of our members, we came together and voted to endorse Christian this past spring, and we are so excited to be supporting him in his run for Congress.
Thank you. And I'm proud to have your support. I also got to do a quick shout out to John and Olivia. They're from the New Hampshire Youth Movement. They are, stand up. They're organizing young folks in this state. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the youth movement, and I'm really proud to have all of you here. talk to them, talk to the work they're doing. They're doing an incredible job. So thank you for being here. Thank you. All right, so this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my story. Tell you why I'm in the race. And tell you what I think we need to do to actually stand up to this administration and start fixing the problems in this country. And then I just want to take questions. Now, I say this at every event. My staff is probably pretty sick of me saying this. Ask hard questions. New Hampshire's tradition is kicking the tires. Kick the candidates, all right? Put them through the rigor. We're facing some enormous challenges in our country. And if you're here, you know that. You don't need me to tell you that. What we need in Congress are people that can stand up to this administration and that have a vision of making our country actually fulfill the promise that it has. That, to me, is at the core of the moment we need to meet. And I'm going to lay out what I think we need to do. But let me just start off, right? I've learned this. You always got to tell people what you're running for in New Hampshire when you're running for Congress, because sometimes people don't know, and I'll tell you a good story about this. So when I jumped in the race, I announced I'm running for Congress. I live up in Moultonborough, okay? And like 2 weeks after I announced, this woman comes up to me in Moultonborough. We were at like a coffee shop or something. And she says, I know who you are. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, word's spreading. Quick, quick. This is fantastic. And so then this woman says, you're Winston's dad. Winston's my dog, okay? That's how she knew me. She follows my dog on social media and had seen me in the background. So you very quickly learn you got to make sure you always introduce yourself and what you're running for. So obviously I'm Christian Urrutia. I'm a Democrat running for Congress to replace Chris Pappas now that he's running for U.S. Senate. So like, what's my story, right? So it begins with my parents. And I talk a lot about this in the campaign, certainly in talking about ICE. I'm a first-generation American. First of my family born in the U.S. And my parents, they're Mexican and Spanish. So they came to the U.S. Their English was so-so, to put it mildly. So if your English is so-so, where are you going to go as a young Latino family? California, Texas, or Florida. They chose Florida. And so that's where I was born. And I was born in Miami. And their vision was, well, we'll be here in the U.S. for a while, but I think we're going to go back to Latin America or something. So they're like, you know, we're in Miami. Do we really got to teach Christian English? And the answer was like, well, we can hold off for a while. And like, what is so remarkable about this country is they then started to see the actual opportunity that America has to offer. The real opportunity to build something. And they said, you know what? I think we're going to stick around. And so as a young Latino family whose kid doesn't really speak English that well, if at all, their English is so-so, they made the next natural step to move to New Hampshire. That's where you go. That'll force you to learn English, right? Certainly in the 80s. And so then we got to the work of actually like finding a real home here. And you know, I say this, like, there's a lot of ugly stuff that's happening in our politics right now. Some of it in the State House. Some of it in Congress. Some of it groups outside of that. But what I do know, that to New Hampshire, like, that brought my family in that barely spoke any English and gave them a shot. Like a real opportunity to build something. Like, that's the American promise. That's the actual America, not what people that want to divide us want us to portray, and certainly not what Trump does. So I then went off to learn English. I went to Library Street School in Hudson. I do have to call out, I don't know where Leslie, there's Leslie, a classmate of mine from high school. So I was really excited to have someone else from Hudson here. But so I go to Library Street School, and I had an ESL teacher, an English as a second language teacher. Do you know how many people needed ESL classes at Library Street School in the early 90s in Hudson? One. One person, and you're talking to him right now, okay? But like, to me, the reason I bring this up, the decisions of Washington and of Concord and that our politicians make have impacts on people. I know that if that line item wasn't in the budget of the Hudson School District, they wouldn't have had an ESL teacher. And if they didn't have an ESL teacher, my outcomes today would be so remarkably different, worse. Real impact. And some of it we feel and we see in real time. Some of it in a year. Some of it is measured in decades. And what this administration is doing, a lot of people are feeling it today. But don't be mistaken. It's also going to be felt in decades for a lot of folks in this country and for this country as a whole. And so we as a Democratic Party, we have to see the full field. What do we do now? How do we invest in the future? So, you know, I figure out this whole speaking English thing and go off and I take my first job at Market Basket in Hudson. Leslie's probably been there a decent amount of times. And now this is over a quarter century ago. My wage on an hourly basis was $5.25 an hour. Do you notice the minimum wage has gone up since then? $2. Think about how different the cost of living is than a quarter of a century ago. And our minimum wage goes up $2. Talk about a failure of D.C., of Washington, of the political class. The most basic element. If you work a full-time job, you'll be able to take care of yourself. That minimum wage today doesn't reflect it. And now people inevitably will say to me, well, Christian, does anyone really work for the minimum wage? And the answer is actually yes, but fine, point taken. You can't live off $8 an hour, or 9, or 10, or 11, or 12, or 13, or 14, and I can go on for a little while. We are so far disconnected from what we need out of government, that we need transformative change in our country. And we need people that are willing to fight for that. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Eventually, I get an opportunity to go to college. So I go to the University of Iowa. Now, a natural question is, all right, let me understand this, man. You're a Latino in New Hampshire who speaks English as a second language, and you decide to go to Iowa. What's the deal? There's some pretty good schools kicking around New England. And I was thinking at the time, look, I like politics. I want to be the next great American writer, too. Iowa has a really good writing program. And, you know, eventually I figure out I'm probably not going to be the next great American writer. All right? So I start kind of rebooting a bit, and I really start focusing on political activism and getting involved, knocking doors against the Iraq War, saying that, hey, everyone in this country has an obligation and a voice to do something. And I think the times are really different now, but the moment also requires all of us today to do something. Knock doors, support a candidate, have your voice heard, write letters, be persistent. This is what this administration doesn't want you all to know and to think, that all of you can do something beyond just, you know, even just voting for a candidate. It's really important that we all step up. Consistent theme to me on what this moment requires. Eventually, I go to law school, and I go to the University of Michigan. Now, for me, to kind of get to that starting line, I had to take out $250,000 of student debt. And I wish that story was unique. It's not. I think of my generation that's come after me. That's a very common story. Folks mortgaging decades of their future just to get a shot. And I think about the American promise, the idea that if you work hard, opportunity comes and you can have success. Well, it's pretty freaking hard when you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt at 22 or 24. We need to actually solve this problem. But my story, you know, I had the indistinct pleasure of graduating from law school in the middle of the financial crisis. All right? And I thought I had a great job, great law firm. And they say to me, look, Christian, we think you're strong, great, fantastic, but we don't even know if we'll be in business in a year. That's how grim things are right now. So take a lap. Take a year off. Come back and see us. And we'll see. And I had to pay $1,500 a month in interest just so that debt wouldn't rise. So I started scrambling. I took my first job at the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office, working, kind of as a prosecutor, really like a lawyer that didn't know what he was doing, helping out the prosecutors do the actual work they needed to do. So everything from DUIs to attempted murder cases worked on. Did that for about a year and then went off to private practice. Practiced international law, human rights, and then in my mid-30s did, I think, the sensible thing that anyone in their mid-30s is going to do when they have a good, strong legal career with a lot of promise. I joined the military, all right? Went off to boot camp. And to tell you how much of a fish out of water I was 35 when I joined. I had never shot a gun. Literally. Like, never shot a gun. My first gun I shot was at boot camp. I was older than everyone in my basic training class. And I was older than my drill sergeants, too. All right? But what I learned, the thing that I learned the most out of that experience, there are so many Americans that their ticket to opportunity is service. They love their country, don't get me wrong. They want to serve. But their opportunity to get something out of this country is to sign up and to serve in the military. And we owe them a lot better than what they're getting right now in this country and right now out of this presidency and right now out of the wars we are fighting. You know, eventually I become an officer, go to officer candidate school, and they ask me, hey, Christian, all right, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I got a law degree. I probably should put it to use. But I wanted to do one thing. I was very adamant about this. I want to be like essentially a public defender for our soldiers. We call it trial defense services, but a public defender for our soldiers. I believe like if a soldier has a serious criminal allegation against them or disciplinary one, they deserve someone in their corner to fight for them. And I'm really proud to continue that service. I still serve here in the Guard here in New Hampshire. I'm still serving, literally, on the defense side. Every few weeks, I have to take some time off from the campaign to go do that duty, and I think it's really important. And then finally, you know, in the last administration, I was an appointee of President Biden at the Pentagon, working on international humanitarian legal issues. So, like, imagine all the things that you see on the news being ignored. That's what I worked on. And really hard things. So questions about the Geneva Convention, adherence to the Geneva Convention, trying to close Guantanamo, trying to keep torture-derived evidence out of our proceedings, trying to ensure that in our foreign affairs we were meeting our international legal obligations. I think that's really important. I think that's what's made the United States a leader in global affairs. I think we need to regain that in our country. I think this administration's designs are anathema to that right now. So, I think a natural question now is, okay, that's a cool story, but why are you in this race? What's the deal? And I'm going to be really frank with all of you. We are facing today the most profound challenge to the American dream that I think this country maybe has ever faced. And what do I mean by the American dream? I mean by the idea that we have a democracy that works, a democracy that's representative of all of you. I think it also means that if you work really hard in this country, you get opportunity and a fair shake and a fair shot. And that if something goes wrong in your life, that there will be a social safety net that will take care of you and make sure that that one bad day or one bad month or one bad year or one bad event won't define the rest of your life. That's the American dream. And one where communities invest in each other and take care of each other. That's what we need to meet. But to do that, we must stand up to Trump. We must. And I got to be frank. We should all be honest with each other. I don't think the Democratic Party's done a good enough job in doing that. I don't. And I'll tell you, I'm more sure of that after having gone through this campaign trail so far. Because I can tell in the eyes of people the fear that they have, not only because of this administration, because this sense that we're not meeting the moment that we need to meet. And it's really important that whomever we send to Congress, from what we can control, which is how we vote, in this election is ready to meet this moment. So let me tell you what I think we need to do. We actually got to stand up to the Trump administration. One, I think impeachment should be on the table. I think it is clear. I don't know how much clearer it can be. Like, the corruption is out in the open. This is a presidency that's made billions of dollars off being president of the United States. A presidency that's made stock trades before announcing things in front of everyone. It's a presidency that systematized violations of the Constitution and of the law by design. ICE is one of the clearest examples of that. No accountability, no adherence to the rule of law from ICE at all. Other things we need to do as Democrats, though. We actually have to use the power of the purse. We actually have to use the power of the subpoena if we get into the majority. We got to drag people in front of Congress, and we got to ask them some hard questions. We got to expose everything that this administration is doing. And then we got to get to the hard work of actually fulfilling that American dream. And I'm going to just talk about a few things, and then I'm just going to open it up for questions. One, we have a healthcare crisis in this country. We do. And I'm going to just, one story that I think is important. So, if you've gotten sick, or you've seen someone like you really love get sick, like really sick, where you don't know what the outcome's going to be, you ask yourself two questions. One, can you get better? And what does that look like? And then the second one, what is this going to do to us financially? What is this going to really look like? And I'll tell you how I intimately know that. Because about 4 years ago, I had a stroke. And my wife and I, we asked ourselves that second question. And no one in this country should have to ask that second question. We're the richest country in the world. We have a trillionaire kicking around, for God's sake. All right? We can have universal health care. And to me, the clearest way to do that is Medicare for all. And we need someone that's willing to fight for that. And I'm tired of hearing folks say some variation of it. It's like some watered down version. We're going to go and we're going to take on the Republicans by negotiating against ourselves from the get-go. That's not going to work. Medicare for all is the clearest way to get everyone in this country health care. And then we got empowered to negotiate drug prices. The Americans are getting ripped off by the pharma industry. We pay more for drugs than Canadians or Europeans. Insulin's a great example. So before the Inflation Reduction Act, Americans were paying 3 to 4 times more for insulin than Canadians. Canadian insulin isn't any different. It's no better than American insulin, all right? But when we actually empower Medicare to do what it needs to do, better outcomes for all of us, whether it's you need insulin or some other medicine of some kind. 2, what do we need to do? Second critical thing that I think we need to solve in this country, childcare. We need universal childcare. I'm just going to give you one statistic that just underscores how we're failing, or government, I should say, is failing our communities. If you're a single mother in New Hampshire with 2 kids under the age of 18, 47% chance you're living in poverty today in America. And a big part of that story is about childcare, because it costs $18,000 a year in New Hampshire to send a kid to childcare. So guess what happens? That single mother, she has to work less hours. She can't compete for the next opportunity. She can't fulfill this ability to say, I'm going to go out and I'm going to build a future for myself in my job, in my career, because they got another more important job to do. That is fundamentally wrong. It is immoral. And again, I come back to, we're the richest country in the world. Now, someone's going to ask, all right, I like your ideas. How do you pay for them? I'll tell you how. You actually tax the billionaires in this country. That's the way to do it. I don't think there are any billionaires kicking around here today. Okay? I don't think so. So I just want to tell you, Jeff Bezos pays a lower effective tax rate than every single one of you. And guess what? The way he does it, completely legal. Our legal system is built for them to accumulate more wealth. And what we've seen over the last quarter century is they've accumulated more wealth and more power. The outcomes of everyone, worse. So I would support Bernie Sanders' wealth tax. I'm also fine with Elizabeth Warren's. I think they're both good. All right? They're fine. But what I do know is fundamentally, we need to tax that billionaire class. And then I just want to talk about one more thing. And then just open it up for questions. There's a lot of other things, too, obviously, to tackle. The corruption in Washington. It goes deeper than Trump. He's the poster child. He is. And his administration is. They're like the major leagues of corruption. But it is, look, you can't convince me that once you go to Congress, you become the best stock trader in the world. Marjorie Taylor Greene did not learn the intricacies of the stock market because she got elected to Washington. All right? Do you know what they learn? They get inside information. They make stock picks that are uncanny in their ability to predict what's going to happen. They outperform Goldman Sachs. So this is what we need. And look, and I still haven't met a voter that is like, no, 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 Christian. Let them trade. Let them trade. That voter doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So like we're all in agreement and Congress still can't get its act together. So we need to clean that up. And it's about more than just the stock trades. It's about having faith in government that they're doing the right thing for all of you. It's also, members of Congress shouldn't be allowed to become lobbyists. Full stop. Ever. You're not sending them there to learn the intricacies of Washington so that they can become millionaires by becoming lobbyists. Now, look, I'm not running for Senate, obviously. Let me tell you the story of John Sununu real quick. All right? He's a senator. He goes off, becomes a lobbyist, and his wealth, it's like quintuples or sextuples, something insane in the course of basically a decade and some more. That's not why you're representing. And guess what happens when someone has that and they're like, oh, in a few years I want to get out of this gig and I want to become a lobbyist over on K Street or wherever else. They're going to be thinking about how can I get my next gig, not about how can I fight for all of you. So we've got to make that illegal. And then finally, we have to go after money in politics in this country. It's breaking our political system. And to do that, it's a hard question. Big things we need to do. Part of it is actually we have to overturn Citizens United, or we need a constitutional amendment. Part of that is we've got to reform the Supreme Court. And I'm happy to get into the details of what that looks like. But those are big questions. But we actually can resolve that question in this election. Because this is the thing. Just don't send people with the values of taking dirty money or of enticing dirty money to spend money on our elections. In this race, one thing that I've made exceedingly clear is we don't need that type of influence in New Hampshire. So a few things that I've done since day one of this race. One, no corporate PAC money. We've never solicited it, we've never accepted it, and we certainly haven't had to return it either. Other candidates in this race have. Two, no APAC money. Don't want them. Breaking the way this works. And it's not just about APAC. It's not. They're the poster child of the pro-Israel lobby. Don't get me wrong. But there's more groups. The Democratic Majority for Israel is another group. Entities that they create just to influence the elections. We need candidates that are going to be clear and unequivocal. We don't want that type of influence in our politics. But it even goes further than that. It's about the billionaire super PACs that are out there. And candidates are saying, hey, I'm going to tax the billionaires, don't worry about it. And behind the back of all of you, they're trying to get those super PACs to come in to get them elected. Who do you think they're going to fight for? You? Or the people that got them elected by spending millions and millions? And this is the thing. This money is coming into this election. It already has. And it's going to continue. And you all have a duty. Keep a scorecard. Who are the candidates that are actually just making the best arguments on their own 2 feet? And who are the candidates that are bringing in all this other support of toxic, dark, dirty money that we don't even know where it comes from. It's going to tell you about who's going to fight for you. At the end of the day, and I want to just open up for questions, one thing I want to leave you. Your country needs all of you. It doesn't just need us candidates to do the right thing or whoever gets elected. It needs all of you. Step up. Do something. Have your voice heard. Hold your elected officials accountable. Hold your candidates accountable. Get involved. This administration wants all of you to think you don't matter. You do. And in this race, you have an opportunity. Change or more of the same. I'm squarely on the side of change. And so I want to just open it up and just get some questions, and let's chat for a bit. So thank you.
Hi, Kristen.
Hey.
I would love to have you draw some contrast.
Sure.
How are you different from some of the other candidates running
Sure.
in CD1?
Sure. So a few things. And look, this is exactly how elections should be. Issues-based. And I'm going to stick to the issues, not personal attacks. I'm a Medicare for All candidate. Stephanie Shaheen and Maura are not Medicare for All candidates. They're different variations of different things. I want to be, I don't know what Stephanie is, frankly. Sometimes. I actually don't know. I do know Maura is Medicare for All who want it. And that's essentially a form of a public option. I don't think that's a good system. Create a tiered system that basically if you're sick or you're not wealthy, you get put on the public system. And if you're wealthy and you're healthy, you get the private system. Different outcomes, not sustainable in the long run. I think we need a Medicare for All system, a system that's available to everyone in this country, that can negotiate for everyone, that can get better outcomes for everyone, and that actually would be cheaper for the country as a whole. So that's one. I just want to talk about just a few more things too, okay? Other areas in which we're different. ICE is a major area. You got to dismantle ICE. You got to dismantle it. No one's going to save ICE, all right? We're not going to go there and be like, hey, you guys got it kind of wrong. Like, be better now. Like, this has been completely corrupted by this administration. So what do we need to do? One, dismantle it. Two, replace it with something that's consistent with our values. I think ICE needs to be broken up. Like, I don't think anyone has any issues with the customs side of ICE. Like, I've never heard anyone that's like, I'm really upset about customs enforcement. So that should be separated out. But the immigration side is what's broken. And so what I think we need to do, we need to get it out of DHS. I think it needs to go over to DOJ. I think all the agents that were there need to be properly vetted, which this administration hasn't done. And the ones that fail need to get kicked booted. And then the people that have committed systematic violations of the law and the Constitution need to be held accountable. So I'm on the dismantle side. Again, Stephanie Moore and a few others are not. They're on the reformist side. And that just depends. Like, if you want that, oh, that's the offering they have. This is the offering that I come with. So that's another area where, like, there's, like, a significant difference of views. There's also, and I just don't want to make this all about Stephanie and Maura, there's also a question of Israel and Ukraine, foreign affairs. So I am squarely on the side, no more money to Netanyahu, period. I'm also squarely on the side of there's a genocide in Gaza, and we got to call it as it is. I'm also on the side of I think of America and the greatness of this country. We're a country that shows a lantern to the world of what the world should and could be. That's what's made us a leader in the 20th century, and we've deviated so far from that, and certainly Netanyahu. And look, just more fundamentally from an economic standpoint, Israel has universal health care. We don't. And we're sending money to their military. Like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And, like, with all due respect to, like, Maura and Stephanie, they're not there on this. They're in a different place. And that's okay. Again, it's offerings. On Ukraine, we, on the other hand, like no money for Israel, we need to stand behind Ukraine. Yes. Squarely behind them. Look, I like peace. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes you got to stand up to the bullies of the world. and you stand up through force. And a world in which Ukraine falls makes the whole world a lot more dangerous. Other candidates are not in that place. Carly said she wouldn't give money or weapons to Ukraine to fund the war. That's a major distinction, right? I just don't want to beat up on two candidates and make the contrast, because there's more contrast than just that. So those are some areas. But this is exactly how elections should be. Who's offering someone that has a vision for what all of you want? And if some of you disagree with me, that's okay too. You'll know always exactly where I stand on something. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Naomi.
Given the horrible mess Trump has created with the Iran war,
Yeah.
if you were in Congress, besides voting against any more funding,
Sure.
what would you do?
Yeah, so that is a major part, right? But more fundamentally, we are too invested in the Middle East. We need to be less invested in the Middle East, in my opinion. Our footprint, I don't think we need to have tens of thousands of American service members in the Middle East at this time. And part of it is thinking, I mentioned before, thinking in decades and not just in the next month or the next year, transformative change. We need actual renewable energy sources in this country so that we're not debating, is the Strait of Hormuz open today or not? Because I got to fill up my gas tank, and I'm a little worried as to what the cost of gas will be. That future is one where we have renewable energy sources. Solar, wind, geothermal. Really important. That's the way we get away from being invested in that part of the world. But look, we have a real problem. We are, in my opinion, this is becoming an intractable position where, we can't force the Strait of Hormuz open. We're kind of learning that in a very painful way. And Iran has learned, because of this, that they can dictate what happened in the Strait of Hormuz. These wars of choices have defined my generation when it comes to foreign affairs. I just don't think that makes any sense. And so we got to get away from that. We got to get away from the wars of choice, not fund the Iran war, less significant footprint in the Middle East, and investment in renewable energies. So thank you. Gail.
I'm going to keep on the subject. Why do we have so much money for war? Endless money for war. And we don't have endless money for people in America. Children and education.
Yeah. I'm going to repeat the question just so that folks can hear. The question is, why do we have money for war and not money to actually spend on our communities, education, and our children? Choices. We have the money. We have the money. I'll tell you one thing. The Department of Defense doesn't need $1.5 trillion. I'll tell you that much. I don't think they even need 1.1 or 1, whatever it was in the last budget either. I think we need to really think about thoughtful cost-cutting metrics. But it's choices. And my choice is squarely on how do we invest in our communities, healthcare, childcare, actually building infrastructure in this country, education, better outcomes for all of us, whatever generation we're part of and the generations to come. Congress. Congress. And they need to exercise the power of the purse and actually do their job. Sir.
You mentioned in your WMUR interview that you are not in favor of nuclear power.
Correct.
We have a lot of nuclear fuel from building bombs and everything else.
Yeah.
If we don't use it in nuclear reactors,
Yeah.
then you have to protect it,
Yeah.
store it
Yeah.
for thousands of years.
Yep.
Why is that a better way to use it than to turn it into energy?
Yeah, so look, this is what I know about nuclear power. Expensive. Yeah, it doesn't have as big of a carbon footprint, but when things go wrong, it leaves a pretty big radioactive footprint. All right? The story of Chernobyl, the story of Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, pretty close.
Is that still true today, though? I think it's safer than it used to
I don't, and you actually look at cancer rates, even around Seabrook right now, much higher in those areas. Real significant actives. What I do, well, this is the thing, though. What I do know we definitely can build solar power plants and wind and geothermal, and it's 100% safe.
Data centers, why would
Yeah.
you need solar for people?
Yeah, exactly. On the question of what do you do with the nuclear material, look, I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly what it is. Obviously, it has to be stored in a manner that is safe and it's ecological. But like, what I do know is I'm not in favor for nuclear. I think that is actually just not going to be a way that we build. And this is the thing. We see what other countries that have wrestled with this. Germany, France, Japan, they cut back. Concerns, real concerns. And so, like, what I do know is we obviously need more clean energy sources. I just don't think nuclear is where we should put, you know, our money right now. But I appreciate the question, Mark. Sir.
Christian, thank you
Yeah.
for your time tonight.
Yeah.
If you were looking 2 years ahead,
Yeah.
what would success compared to the current incumbents
Yeah.
look like to you?
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've had a big list.
Yeah.
It's a tough list.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So,
what does it look like?
yeah, so one is like, look, all the things that I said, we're not going to do in 2 years. Like, anyone that's saying that is like, just like, they can sell you a bridge in Brooklyn as well, all right? But like, to me, success is one, standing up to this administration, slowing down and stopping some of the abuses we've seen, stopping funding of organizations like ICE, putting before a record before the American people of what these abuses have been, and going after corruption. I think there's also strategic areas on the healthcare side. We should always be fighting for Medicare for all. But we can also do other things too in the interim. Some of those things can be like empowering Medicare to actually negotiate drug prices for Americans. One area where I think there can be significant bipartisan agreement, corruption-related stuff and reforms. Like, I've talked to a lot of Republicans. There's a lot of Republicans out here in New Hampshire that are pretty pissed off about what's happening in D.C. with the corruption. They want change too. Same with the independents. We need to talk to them. We need to be able to work with them. Significant areas of agreement. And I think on the foreign policy side, we are at a breaking point in this country. There's a lot of Republicans that are saying, I don't think this makes any sense. Whether it comes to questions of Israel that we already covered, or our ongoing commitment in the Persian Gulf with the war in Iran. So I think there's a number of things in the next 2 years we can do, but what we really need to be building is the infrastructure for transformative change when we hopefully have the presidency in 2028. Sir, and then Sue. Sue. All right, Sue. He deferred to you, so.
I'm just wondering, what committees would you want to serve on
Yeah.
in Congress and why?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what committees would I want to serve on and why? That's the question. So let's just think about what I just talked about. One, standing up to Trump. What's the best committee for that? Oversight. So that'd be one. Two, questions of foreign affairs, getting our act together. What's the best committee for that? Armed services. Good place to be. I think there's some other ones as well, but those two to me, and I think my background as a lawyer, as someone that's actually taken on war criminals in my past life of sorts, someone that's actually served in the military, suits itself for both those committees. So thank you, Sue. All right, go ahead.
My mother is from Mexico.
Yeah.
I believe undocumented immigrants make our country greater.
Yep.
But, what do people mean that we still have to fix, fix immigration?
Yeah. Yeah. So like, look, we talked about ICE already, right? Like that's the first thing. Then the second thing is like, we can't have 15 million people in this country living in the shadows when it comes to immigration. Like that's not sustainable. We need a pathway to actually allow for legalized status. I am not in favor of having families where one person's undocumented, the kids are, obviously citizens by birthright. Like that is, and they're following the rules in every other way. That individual, we need a path towards a legal status. We also, though, as Democrats, and look, you're talking to a first-generation American. Like, I've lived the immigrant experience, all the hardship and all the beauty that comes with it. We got to get comfortable with also saying, yeah, we need a secure border, too. We need a process that is rooted in the law. It needs to be enforced in the right way, but it's got to be enforceable. That's okay, too. We got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And so often, D.C. just gives you, are you going to chew gum or are you going to walk? You only get one or the other. No, we can do both of these things at the same time. We just need leaders that understand that and have that vision. So thank you. Sir.
Your last answer, I think, points to what may be the common denominator for all of these problems.
Yeah.
And it may, at least in my mind, it seems to be the place to start and the place to put the most effort, and that is restoring the rule of law.
Yeah.
All of the things that you alluded to come down to observing the laws that we have
Yep.
on the books,
Yep.
looking at accountability, restoring or resurrecting some laws that have been either ignored or have been rescinded.
Yep.
And I think you're well positioned to pursue that as an attorney.
I agree.
But I think, but in many, I think a lot of your answers
Yep.
could be reduced to restoring the rule of law.
Sure. Well, I think that's the common look. I think you're right. Like there's policy differences, right? Like Medicare for all versus ACA versus public. That's a policy question. But one of the things that's broken, and this administration has broken by design, is this idea that the rule of law works, that the rule of law sustains us, that the rule of law, we know that if the courts say something, the executive is going to follow it. And this is the thing, Congress, though, like, right, our system, holding each other accountable. Congress needs to hold an executive that fails to do that accountable. And that's like what hasn't happened. But we have to restore faith in the rule of law. And part of this is like the rule of law has been degraded, in my opinion, by the Supreme Court itself, by the decisions that it has made. Like Clarence Thomas has so many conflicts of interest. It's like laughable. It's laughable. The Supreme Court. Like if you can't trust the justices to do it the right way, why are people going to believe in like, oh, this is a system that works with the law? But we've also gone further, and I think this is really important. It talks about money in politics. We've legalized corruption at scale in this country. Yes, the idea that corporations can spend money on our politics. The idea that we can have dark money super PACs where you don't even know where the money comes from, and that can just come in, carpet bomb our elections with the most like defamatory ads possible. And there's nothing you can do. And supposedly that's rooted in the First Amendment.
Well, but that whole thing has roots in the 1970s economics departments, particularly at the University of Chicago, where they said, oh, corporate boards, which up to that time had an explicit and an implicit responsibility to the communities in which their companies worked, shouldn't have that. They should have responsibility only to the stockholders. Initially, that was a small cohort of eggheads.
Yeah.
But it then spread.
Yeah.
And it spread, and it got it emboldened Reagan.
Yep.
So that he screwed Carter.
Yep.
And it's been, with maybe possibly one exception in Bush 1.
Yep.
Ever since undermining the spirit of America.
Well, I totally. So the question is basically the growth of. Let me just try to synthesize. Look, it's yeah, exactly. Look, it's ultimately the growth of corporate power and how it's become, separated from like other outcomes that could be better for the United States. Let's just like look at the statistics right now in our country. CEO pay growth outpaced any other type of pay growth in America right now. right now, basically, 93% of the stock market is owned by the top 10%. The top 1% have as much wealth as the bottom 50% in this country right now. And that's gotten worse over the last quarter century at an increasing pace. And the pace is increasing as we speak right now. And a part of it is ultimately that covenant that I think existed for a period of time in America between corporation and corporate power and the power of the people and what's good for people and what's good for workers has been broken. And Washington has failed. And we need leaders in Washington that are going to fight to restore that balance. And it's about reducing that corporate power and reducing those outcomes that we're seeing. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah, David.
I've been disappointed about Chris Pappas not returning to New Hampshire, having like a town hall meeting every couple of months or something.
Yeah.
I would like a commitment from you that when you go to Washington, you come back.
I'll give you a better commitment than that. Okay. I will host town halls. One. Okay. Part of it is also like being a good member of Congress. Like, you're all my clients if I get elected. I'm fighting for all of you. Yeah, and how can you actually fight for your clients if you don't talk to your clients? That doesn't make any sense. And then the other thing I'm just going to say, term limits. Term limits. Sorry, Sue, I know you don't like them, but it's okay. We've had this conversation before. But look, term limits. I don't think people should be members of Congress for decades and decades.
Or the Supreme Court.
Yeah, same. Yeah. This is all of them. Trust me, all of them. So thank you, David. I think that's a great question.
But you would come back here
100 and host town halls. Yeah, and that's okay if those town halls are a little rough too on me, because that's how you actually learn. Yeah, look, you're an attorney. You've talked to some clients that have been unhappy before, and that tells you how do you do your job better. How do you actually fulfill their intent and why they want you there? So that part of it is actually hearing tough feedback as well. So yes, 100%, David.
Thank you.
Sir, I can't read your Matt.
On the topic of law and
Yeah.
using your law degree, would you be willing to prosecute some of the people responsible for some of these things with ICE, as Stephen Miller?
Yes, 100%. Well, impeachment and prosecution, yes, 100. That's all on the table. Stephen Miller is impeachable, and we should put impeachment proceedings against him, 100%. We should also ensure that the Department of Justice, and if we need a special prosecutor, special counsel to do this, then so be it. We should have that, and Congress can have that power too, and it can exercise leverage on the executive. And that also means the Epstein class as well. They need to be investigated, prosecuted, and exposed to the American people. Yeah, I agreed. Yeah. Yeah. So. Wayne.
Along the ideas of getting rid of corporate money out of elections.
Yeah.
Would you be willing for our elections to be federally funded, much like the European model is?
Yeah, I think there should be some element of that. Right in New York, right, in the New York City model, it's you get X amount of donations, then they match, and then you're capped. And the presidential used to have that. Right. They just have blown through the limits, and they're well, forget it now. You can't be competitive. But yeah, some system that ultimately reduces the fact that look, I'll tell you this. I say this as a candidate that spent a lot of time on the phones fundraising. All right, I'm asking a little moment of true honesty. I don't think the best measure for deciding who's going to fight for you the hardest is who's the best at cajoling people to give them money over the phone. All right, that's a bad system. Those things have nothing to do with each other at all. Some people may say there's even an inverse relationship between them. So having a system where, look, obviously you got to be a credible candidate, right? But having some system of establishing credibility and then saying, yeah, you're going to be capped out. And that would actually make it about who's going to bring the best arguments forward. But we have to go after the super PACs, the dark money. That's really important in order to do that. Jan, then, yeah. Oh, it defers to Dennett.
I started supporting you, I don't know, a month or so ago. I got
Yeah.
really excited about you. And so I'm telling my friends, hey, Christians who you need to vote
Yeah,
for.
good.
When I talk to some of my
my Jewish friends.
Yep.
They say, "Gosh, Jan, he sounds really great." And I say, "Yeah, and this is a candidate who understands the distinction between I oppose Israel and I oppose Israel's policy of."
100%.
The nuance, and he talks about
Yep.
anti-Semitism, and that's really important to
Yep.
me. It's important to
Yep.
my friends. But they say, Jan, you know, he says what's happening in Gaza is a genocide, and that's just a bridge too far to me.
Sure.
How do I talk to them more about that? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so look, I mean, one is, I think that so the question is basically about Israel having conversations about the fact that there's a genocide in Gaza, but also the concerns that comes from the Jewish community. Am I capturing that correct? Yeah, okay, yeah. So look, one is like, I look at this as like, as a question, look, I'm a lawyer. As a matter of law, is that test fulfilled? And like, there's a lot of bad things that aren't genocide as well. Like, right, like mass devastation and death doesn't have to be genocide. And I think the reality is that most Americans, when you talk to them and you lay out what's happening in Gaza, will say, yeah, that feels like war crimes, that feels like it's wrong, that feels like it's horrific, that's awful. And so to me, the question is like, look, I look at the Genocide Convention, I think it's a genocide. But the question is, this is the thing, we cannot have a state of affairs in the Middle East where a population is dying at the levels that we're seeing in Palestine right now. And this isn't like a peaceful outcome. We need a two-state solution. Like when we actually have to exercise leverage on the government of Netanyahu and the right-wing coalition in Israel to get to that. But this is the thing to me, like, look, I see that, but I'll say this, and I've been really outspoken on the anti-Semitism question. I come back to this idea, walking and chewing gum. We can do two things at once. We can say, look, there is a rise in anti-Semitism in the world and in this country. We got to stand up to it. We got to call it out. We have to make it unacceptable. We have to speak out against it. And I certainly will. And I think those people that are committing hate crimes deserve the strictest of penalties in this country, whether they're anti-Semitism or they're anti-immigrant or they're anti-Latino, and the list can go on. Like, I think that's really important. But to me, it's like, what I care about the most is human rights and human values. And so I think, look, there's a genocide in Israel, and that captures a lot of attention. There's also one in South Sudan as well. And the UAE is supporting it. And we should treat them the same way that we would treat Israel on it. China has committed a genocide as well with the Uyghurs. Russia has committed genocidal acts in Ukraine as well. We have to call all of that out and support sanctions on all those organizations and entities that engage like that. Israel obviously gets a lot of attention because of the unique relationship we have with them right now. But that's the way I'd approach it. So I hope that answers your question, Jan.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Christian. I just want all of you to recognize what a beautiful night this is. And Christian has checked all the boxes in terms of affordability, health care. All of those issues are going to be impacted. I, for one, have a raspy voice because it's so goddamn hot and humid. I haven't been able to go out and walk, and I went out anyway without a mask, which is really stupid. But we had a microburst over here in Haven Park, and these over 100-year-old trees were upended. The city took care of the situation beautifully, but the impact economically, worldwide, and here, and I'm so happy to hear Christian, at least it's the elephant in the room in terms of climate change, but it's affecting every single aspect. And Christian talking about the dangers of nuclear power and the fact that we need to go for more solar and more electric cars, and, you know, and I know there are people, all of you probably completely disagree with me, but we need to save our planet in order that we're saving our country.
Thank you. Thank you. And look, part of that is creating, and like, look, from a business side, like part of that is we have to create a stable business environment for people who want to invest in solar and wind, in battery technology. The leader in all those categories isn't the United States. It's China. They're eating our lunch because they know that's the future. That's how they're going to build the true 21st century economy. Yeah, agreed. Let's do one more question. It's getting dark. Mark? Yeah, Mark. Well, I haven't got any hold on, sorry. I haven't got any questions from this side of the room. So, sorry. Go ahead, sir. We'll come back, Mark. Don't worry. Yeah.
What about our property taxes in New Hampshire?
Yeah.
It's like
It's a disaster.
it's going up. Property taxes, electricity's going up another. What did they say? Another 15%.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you plan on helping us with?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So property tax. So, look, like we've seen what these tax bills are going up right now. I think in Concord it's like 60% increase. 60% increases. 70%. All right? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there's a few things. Look, one is state and federal. Part of it is we got to work to get people like Wendy Thomas in the majority, and Alice Wade, and Wayne, and Miles as well. That's part of this because they're downshifting. They're moving more and more obligations down to the local municipalities that are getting squeezed and having to raise more revenues. But there's also things the federal government can definitely do to make this better. The biggest line item for a lot of towns and municipalities is the cost of health care for their workers. And your taxpayer dollars have to go fund that health care. Medicare for All alleviates that burden from the towns and the municipalities. It's also about the federal government ensuring that it fulfills its mandates. One of those mandates is called IDEA, the idea that there's education for folks with disabilities in this country, and that the states and the local municipalities have to fulfill it. The federal government had said they were going to fund about 40% of that cost. Right now they're funding about 7 to 8%. They're not meeting their obligation. We need a federal government that makes that a priority. If I go to Washington, I'll fight for those things. Those type of things would alleviate that burden. But you're right, like this is an unsustainable situation. On the power side, we got to talk about the data centers, which we haven't talked about. Part of that story is the fact that we're using more and more energy for these data centers. And right now we don't have any rules of the road for what that's going to look like. And look, again, I support Bernie Sanders on this. We should have a moratorium on the building of new data centers until there's a few conditions are fulfilled. One, what are rules to actually make AI safe for our communities? Two, how are we going to take care of the workers that are displaced? Three, how do we empower local municipalities to be able to dictate whether they want a data center in the municipality? And four, how do we make sure that they can get power and water without putting all of the externalities on all of you and polluting our water sources? So basic things, those type of changes would help alleviate some of the burdens you described. So thank you. Let's do maybe one more. Thank you. One more question. Mark.
Trump is putting his thumb on the elections for the midterms.
Yeah.
Got red states to redistrict to give him more favorable Republican representatives.
Yep.
Save America Act.
Yeah.
Voter suppression.
Yep.
How confident are you that we will have free and fair elections in the fall?
Yeah. Look, so the question is, how confident am I that we'll have free and fair elections in the fall in light of what's happening out of the Trump administration? Look, the designs of this administration are to constrain the exercise of the franchise in different ways, the ability to vote, put more friction in the process, whether it's voter ID laws, whether it's helping for more dilution. This is what's been happening with the Voting Rights Act and what went up to the Supreme Court, and it struck down significant parts of it. There's a few things I think we need to do in the long run to shore up our electoral system. One of them is, look, the one thing Congress can actually do and could pass, stop political gerrymandering. Congress can actually pass a law to make it illegal. And if I go to Washington, I'd vote for that law. But what we also need to do is we have to make it clear it is unacceptable for this administration to make the exercise of the franchise of individuals, whether it's on the base of race, whether it's based on political affiliation or income or whatever else, harder. And we need to actually ensure that we, again, this is a state and federal issue, that we empower folks like the elected officials here from the state side, to be able to fight for this, because so much of it falls ultimately on the state side and what they do. And I'm really worried that, you know, the administration wants to bring in the DOJ to like oversee our elections. I don't like that. Like, there's no real voter fraud issue in New Hampshire. It's just like a